Welcome to the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast, where our hosts, Jeffrey Wilson and Pat Militich, probe the minds of experts from a vast spectrum of knowledge on how to best prepare for the inevitable emergency situation to come. Jeffrey and Pat and the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast are your insurance policy moving forward. And now, here they are, the hosts of the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast, Jeffrey Wilson and Pat Militich.
And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you catch this episode of the next episode of the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast. Look, we're very thankful to Red Voice Media, number one, and their platform for bringing us on board. And I know my co-host, Jeffrey Wilson, is thankful as well that Ray and the folks at Red Voice Media have brought us on. So we want to give thanks to them first off.
Without a doubt. Finding a platform where they're not, you find so many conditions with so many platforms anymore, and censoring, et cetera, they're just letting us say what we're saying, which, really isn't crazy. That our other show is more of the crazy stuff. We're talking solutions, positivity, just ways to handle the different curveballs that are thrown at us in life. Be whatever it is. That's why it's the 360-degree asymmetrical approach to all the different kind of threats we face, or just curveballs in life that we face. But it'll be a fun one.
So in this episode, so we're not always going to have guests on. Jeff and I like to come on and just spitball, throw ideas back and forth, and do some headlines and debunking of headlines, so to speak. So Jeff, there's a lot of stuff going on, and for years we've been pointing out that there's a lot of garbage going on in the media. I mean, go back. You can take us back to, the Vietnamese War, what caused that, what went on with World War II. The media has always been an apparatus to get us into wars, to cause genocides, to, cause a lot of, create the environment for the trials and tribulations of mankind. So
without a doubt. I mean, you go back to, the Spanish-American War and the sinking of the Maine and William Randolph Hearst, his lockdown of the media at the time, again, to help push a certain narrative to get us in and out of certain wars. And the media has always been a huge part. I don't know how many people understand or know about what like Operation Mockingbird is. It's just the fact that the media is absolutely controlled. There's just without a shadow of a doubt. I don't know if anybody has seen the Sinclair media video of one person talking and then talking about how independent their news are, and then it extrapolates into 2 screens and then 3 screens, and it goes into hundreds of different screens that Sinclair Media owns, all saying the same thing. So then, this gets into, we have 4 or 5, companies, corporations that own all these different media outlets. So it's very difficult to get any kind of alternative narrative when they have such a stranglehold. And we're going to get into some of the stories today, but just having that background, people didn't understand. I mean, it's just, and this happens on both sides. Every single media outlet we have is in some way controlled, and their narratives are oftentimes nonsense.
Yeah, and so those, while basically working on centralization and bringing people under the envelope of, so to speak, the NWO, New World Order, and few controlling the many, and those few get fewer every year, where shows like this and other shows on Red Voice Media and, select others out there that are trying to be decentralized and give freedom back to the citizens, where people are using their intuition and individual thought processes and not falling into that group think. And, you've even had to guide me in some things. And, I was like, man, Trump, he's got to be the guy, man. He's got to be the guy. And you're like, he might be a little tied to, the people that maybe bailed him out in the 80s, from the Taj Mahal fiasco and things like that. So, it took me quite a while to go, okay, I'm done with any politicians unless they are, so to speak, local. And I know these people through and through throughout their lives, and they're not, beholden to big corporations and things like that. It's pretty much a lock on national, certainly not congressmen, senators, presidents, vice presidents, all of that.
It's unfortunately, in my humble opinion, it's a mafia of sorts. It's organized crime. It's just a certain whatever variation you want to, it's been that way for a long time. And going back to, well, anyway, yeah. But the media, going back to the media, the stranglehold that the media has on us, it's really been very dangerous, man, because it has gotten us into a lot of different conflict, whether domestically or internationally. And it like I always talk about, it's hard to present a solution to a problem unless you realize what the problem is exactly. And again, the impact of the media, as far as when people talk about divide and conquer, they don't really need to conquer if they can control. So that's what we get with a lot of the media is they're controlling people's behaviors through a lot of these false narratives. So it's really, again, going back to Red Voice Media or any platform that is allowing people to speak their truth, to exchange ideas. I mean, that's always a big red flag for me. If they're trying to restrict people just having conversations or exchanging ideas and, certain words you can't say, it's very, very, very dangerous, man. Our freedom of speech is our first right in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And if anything, man, we've seen in the last couple of years how dangerous it can be to the groupthink. When you have this thought police out there ready to just cancel and ruin people's lives because they might say something that you might disagree with. Dangerous times, man.
Right. And
sorry for rambling there.
And detractors of that idea, Jeff, would say, well, but Facebook is a private company or publicly traded, entity, so it's therefore not, government, so it can restrict you and it can, say you're violating community standards, and Instagram can do the same thing, Twitter can do the same thing. And we'll get into the Elon Musk stuff here in a little bit when it comes to social media, because, we have different thoughts on Sir Musk over there. But anyway, that's the whole point, is that without government assistance and basically, I think a lot of money being sent their way, Facebook wouldn't exist in the size that it is. Twitter would not exist in the size and scope that it is. So, they're intricately tied together, and so therefore, I think in my mind, that there is room, some way, shape, or form, for anybody that has the balls anyway, attorney-wise and law firm-wise, to be able to file a class action lawsuit in terms of violating citizens' First Amendment rights. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's one of those things. I mean, we oftentimes these terms of agreements are very lengthy, so none of us read it. But it's just like Twitter, Facebook, any number of these things, and with these apps we use. I mean, look at the terms of conditions for TikTok, for example. It's absolutely insane how we just give up so much information and our rights to not be monitored and our screen, our keystrokes monitored. I mean, when we download so many of these apps, do you mind if part of the conditions, can I get on your mic? Can I record you on your camera? Can I have access to all your files? And because we want to be a part of this, whatever, digital world, we hit yes without even really getting the ramifications and the impact of that. So, I mean, it's just like, I was at work the other day, and my friend, he just happened to bring, I'm just a random thing here, but he's happened to bring up the name Sho'nuff. And I don't know if anybody's seen the movie The Last Dragon. Sho'nuff was the nemesis in The Last Dragon. And so I'm like, me and my friend just started talking about that movie kind of randomly. 2 days later, he comes up to me. He's like, Jeff, I have not talked about that movie since it fucking came out 30 years ago. My phone, I woke up this morning and my phone had an advertisement of rent or download on Amazon, whatever, The Last Dragon. So anyway, our phones are just listening to us constantly. This gets into what are those called? Fusion centers, where they're just listening to everything, just compiling information. Like data is the new oil. So going back to your original question, like we just give this stuff up just to be a part of this digital world and social networking. And it goes back to kind of what Aldous Huxley said. It's going to come to a point we're gonna embrace our slavery. We're going to ask for it. We're going to beg for it. Hey Jeff, we're going to monitor you through this app. Is that cool? Through your camera and through your microphone? Yes. Now I can fucking watch twerk videos from China or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's we all do it.
Yeah, and it came across, somebody sent it to me as an Instagram video of a compilation of all the nurses and doctors doing their TikTok dances while people are laying in their hospital beds dying, and they even had them doing videos, and these are obviously actors that, had bodies in body bags and carrying them down the hallway of the hospitals while they're dancing, just to literally just mind fry, anyone who's watching that, like, oh my God, we know that is just actors who have been paid by whatever PSYOP operation that is. But there are a lot of those dances, that have been probably organic somewhat at some of those hospitals where these lunatics have seen other ones that were done by,
Yes.
as a psyop, and then they just like jump on board. Hey, let's do a TikTok dance and all this other shit.
Without a doubt.
So, but anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about different headlines, things going on right now.
What you got?
And so in the USA Today, I've got this. I saw it on the rack today, or yesterday, sorry. And it said, experts feared attack was likely. This is regarding the anti-LGBTQ attack in Colorado Springs, right? The nightclub in Colorado Springs. And it says here, this is after anybody who's paying attention knows that it was a person who their pronouns were they, them, right?
I did hear something about that, I guess, in one of his original court proceedings when they were addressing him as a certain name. He's like, no, he's non-binary, so he doesn't go by the name him, her. That's the only real thing I heard about it. And they're speculating like why he did that. And they're like, well, because he didn't want to get pinched with a hate crime because then he'd really be in trouble. I'm like, well, you're fucked anyway. You killed like 5 people. I mean, who cares if you did it out of hate or whatever? You're going to prison the rest of your life.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's all. So here's what they write in here, though. This is where how the media does their best to paint, guys like you and I as extremists for just being straight males, right? This is more of the division is all it is. It says the people paying attention to extremism in America knew an attack like the one at Club Q was coming. Experts who monitor the far right have watched for months as public aggression towards the LGBTQ community in general and the transgender population in particular has ramped up. Drag shows across the country for months have been targeted by far-right extremists. So listen to the language of the USA Today and saying that it's far-right extremism to have a problem with strip shows with transgenders while 5-year-olds are there.
Right.
That's what they say is extremism now and then. And so we now have to, I guess, recognize the problem. And the problem is the media painting law-abiding, God-fearing citizens as extremists while grown men are dressed in, wigs and makeup and dresses and shaking their asses and twerking for 5-year-olds.
Well, I mean, again, this is obviously, part of the culture war that we've talked about. But it's whether it's 2022 and this version of the culture war, I mean, this is all divide and conquer / divide and control. Take people, create the labels, like you said, extremists or this and this, create the groups, and then divide and then play the groups off against each other. This is just basic balkanization. And it works every time because we're all very, very tribal people and we, like to be a part of our group and represent our group and defend our group. So whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's politics, we see this all the time. And so, like you said, the media does such a great job of manipulating these narratives and playing these groups off against each other. It's wickedly brilliant, but the potential consequences can be very, very, very dangerous, whether it's the Balkans, whether it's the Sudan, whether Rwanda. I'm not saying that this is where we're going, but when you talk about divide and conquer and control on steroids, at the end of that road is potential genocide, where you see the other person is no longer an individual, but is the other based off their group, and your group doesn't fuck with that group. You start hearing the language of one of the parts of stages of genocide is dehumanization. Well, this liberal person, whatever, that does the drag, they're clearly not human beings. These Trump supporting red hat MAGA wearing, they're clearly not human beings. You know what I mean? When you start hearing that language of people denoting the fact or denoting in their perception, like this isn't even a human being anymore. This is how you get a Rwanda where almost 1 million people are killed in freaking 3 months with machetes, for God's sakes. And that was all.
Those were assault machetes, Jeff.
Well, you know what I mean. A deadly freaking weapon, and they created a freaking unprecedented meat grinder. But this was all based off of Hutus and Tutsis that were going at it for years. None of it happens overnight. So it's just it's going back. I know I kind of went a long way around what you're talking about as far as the shooting goes, and
no, but it's
violence up against, name the group now, violence against Asians, violence, anti-Semitism against, the Jewish community. I mean, there's no shortages of groups that they are able to divide us on. And again, we have to address these issues as they happen. But again, it's not about the individual anymore. It's about the collective. It's about what tribe are you in, what group are you with, and again, the masterful way in which they play those groups up against each other. So
well, let's rewind. So given the only way we can end up in a genocidal situation is if citizens go along with this bullshit, right? So thus the reason for a show like this, where we're trying to help people understand the end game of what these psychopaths that are running these psyops, what the goal is, right? And so if citizens just go, you know what? No, I'm not having any part of it. I'm going to hang out with my neighbors. We're going to barbecue. They're Muslim. I'm Christian, or whatever it is. They're black. I'm white, Latino. We're going to hang out. I'm going to invite them over to my house. We're going to eat dinner. We're going to get to know each other. We're going to become friends. We're going to become close. We're not going to let this shit come between us, because we know what the end game is. And that's what you and I have always tried to encourage as much as possible. And, it's interesting that, guys like us who try to push for unity are the ones generally that get targeted the most, because those on the right, well, they want division apparently as well, right? Or who are pushing that mindset. I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying that the uniparty, like Boone Cutler talked about on our previous episode, folks who are in control, they may take and play the part as a conservative or a liberal, but either way, they're part of the division.
To a large degree. I mean, because like I've always said, it's all wrestling, man. I mean, it's, again, part of this, when we get in the dialectic of right versus left, extreme tribalism, that's fine, represent your party. But it's like at the end, understand that they are controlled by much higher powers. I mean, it's, there's always somebody controlling, whether it is the right, whether it's the left, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Joe Biden. There's always, in my opinion, I like to call them the IFCs, the International Financial Coalition, International Financial Cartel. These are all multinational it's never nation state versus nation state. There's a lot of old money still hanging out at the top, and they control the strings of everything. This is whatever phrase you want to use, trilateral commission, globalism, etc. These are the cats who control. If you know their names, they're not running shit, in my opinion.
Right.
Even your Klaus Schwabs, they're rich, they're errand boys. They're rich and powerful errand boys. But again, if you know their names, I mean, it's again a part of creating these kind of boogeymen. We got to have, whether it's Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these are all front people for much larger agendas, obviously. But yeah.
So now let's talk about, since we've got the psyops, we talk about the controlled people. We can go back and we can rewind in terms of this shooting, the LGBT shooting, the LGBTQ community, the transgender community more specifically. Was RuPaul and guys like even Dennis Rodman prompted to dress like this, to were they paid handsomely, to run these psyops on people to kind of get the momentum going on this transgender movement, right? Because they were kind of the first, weren't they?
Who's that? Dennis Rodman?
RuPaul, Dennis Rodman.
I do remember, yeah, that in the 90s. Yeah.
And Dennis Rodman's a guy who went to North Korea all the time and hung out with Kim Jong-un, and what's the deal? Some of these look, I'm a grown man. For me, especially if I'm a Dennis Rodman, who's obviously got plenty of testosterone, very aggressive basketball player, used to get in fights all the time and shit. He's an alpha male. Let's not bullshit around. But he's wearing all kinds of feminine makeup and shit, and getting his hair done in different colors, and wearing earrings and all this other stuff. And there's some funky shit going on, Jeff.
Well, I've always heard, and Jeff. No. I'm just saying, I've heard a lot of interesting shit about professional athletes, particularly like basketball players. And I mean, you got shit tons of money like that, and the level of adulation that these cats get. And it's, going back to even like, back in LA when the Lakers were the shit. I mean, I've just heard some interesting shit. So,
well, you can't leave us hanging at the end of a dead end street like that, bro.
I mean, I can't drop any names. I'm just saying it's, when the world is your oyster on that level, from what I've heard, as the gentleman athletes, sometimes they say they get tired of the ladies. So they switch it up a little bit. And I mean, I'm just saying the parties I've heard have gotten really extracurricular. So my point is, Dennis Rodman, even though to you and I, the lay cat who just normal dude, like he dressed up as a chick, like from what I've heard, that shit's pretty tame Compared to what happens behind closed doors. Dennis was more one of the first ones to kind of take it public, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, mind you, I didn't make millions of dollars as a professional athlete or professional coach or even broadcaster. But I've not had the inkling to go down, that path, Jeff.
It's not for all. I'm not saying all professional athletes. You didn't hear me say that. I'm just saying it's. And even like the Hollywood parties, all those multi-million dollars, they get into some extra shit, man. Not all of them, obviously, not all of them. It's just
well, Tommy Morrison apparently, yeah, he was one of those.
That used to be my guy, dude. That used to be my guy.
Yeah. Tommy was a hell of a fighter.
He beat George Foreman, who we had the chance to talk to. We digress into sports, but you and I had a great chance to talk to George Foreman. That was amazing.
Right.
But anyway.
So, okay, fast forward now. Let's talk international scope stuff that's going on right now.
You've been listening to the Self-Defense Warrior Podcast with Jeffrey Wilson and Pat Militich. Watch the complete interview on Red Voice Media Premium using the link below, completely uncensored and ad-free. Not a member yet? Try it for $1.